My name is Marisa Botello. I am 34 years old, and on Christmas Eve my mother told me to crawl. It happened in a dining room full of people who had known me since I was born, in a house on Caucasian Street in Fall River, with the windows fogged from the kale soup, and 22 relatives packed in shoulder to shoulder. My father pointed his fork at my wheelchair, and he did it slowly, so everybody would follow the line of his hand. "Stop faking for attention," he said. "You have been sitting in that thing for 8 years, and every person at this table knows you can walk when it suits you." Then my mother stood up, walked behind me, took the push handles, and rolled my chair backward out of the room. She parked it in the hallway by the coat rack, came back, sat down, and picked up her wine. "Crawl if you have to," she said, and they laughed. Not all of them, but enough of them. Enough that the sound filled the room and covered the noise of the radiator. I did not cry. I did not beg for the chair. I put my fork down on the plate, lined it up straight the way my grandmother taught me, and I folded my hands in my lap while my legs sat under that table, like 2 sandbags that belonged to somebody else. What none of them knew, not one of the 22 people breathing that steam, was that the floor under their chairs was mine. Not my father's, not the family's, mine, on paper, in the registry of deeds, in ink. And the bonding paperwork that kept my father's company alive, the paperwork that let him bid public work at all, had my signature at the bottom of it, and my money sitting behind it. I took out my phone under the tablecloth. I made 1 call, and I said 11 words. 5 minutes later, my father's phone rang with a Providence number, and he listened for about 10 seconds, and I watched the color leave his face from the jaw upward. Then a man who had never once apologized to me in 34 years got down on the carpet of a house he did not own and asked me not to leave. To understand what he heard in those 10 seconds, you have to go back to a mill building on Anawan Street in May of 2017. I was 25 years old, a second-year journeyman out of the pipefitters local in Providence, and I was good at it. My father was the general on that job, a mill conversion into 48 apartments, and Botello Mechanical had the whole mechanical package. On the 16th of May, at about 10 in the morning, I was on a rolling rack on the 4th floor, setting hangers for a 4-inch main. The rack had a red tag on it 2 weeks before, and somebody had taken the tag off, and nobody wrote down who. It went out from under me, and I fell 22 feet onto a concrete slab. I remember the sound more than the pain. I remember a man screaming for somebody to call, and I remember thinking, very calmly, that I could not feel my belt buckle. I broke the 11th thoracic vertebra. The injury is what doctors call incomplete, which is a word that has cost me more than the fall did. Incomplete means some signals still get through. It means that with braces and parallel bars and a physical therapist holding my gait belt, on a good day, I can stand and take 4 or 5 steps that look like walking to somebody watching from across a room. It also means my legs do not hold me for longer than that I cannot feel a burn on my calf, that my bladder runs on a schedule and a catheter, and that a wrinkle in a cushion can open a wound on my hip that takes 4 months to close. Every person with an incomplete injury will tell you the same thing. The families who love you learn the word incomplete. The families who resent you only hear the word walk. Mine only ever heard the word walk. If you are listening to this from somewhere far from Fall River, I would honestly like to know where you are, so tell me in the comments. And if you have ever had your pain treated like a performance by the people who raised you, stay with me, because this whole story is for you. Here is the part that matters about my family, and I am going to lay it out plainly instead of pretending it started that Christmas. There were 2 of us, me, born in 1991, and my sister Kayla, born in 1996. My father, Carlos Botello, came up hard, the son of people who got off a plane from São Miguel in 1968 with 1 suitcase and a cousin's address. My mother, Lourdes, worked the 3 to 11 shift at a nursing home on Highland Avenue for 19 years and made sure everyone knew it. In that house, worth was labor. If you were useful, you were loved. That was not said out loud, but it was the entire operating system. So I made myself useful early. I was the one who went on jobs with my father at 14, who carried pipe, who learned to sweat a joint before I learned to drive. Kayla was the pretty one, the one who cried easily, the one whose feelings were events that the household organized itself around. When Kayla failed out of 2 semesters at Bristol Community College, that was stress. When I got a 90 on a math test, that was expected. And my grandmother, Diolinda, saw all of it. She was born in 1931, on São Miguel. She buried a husband at 52, and she owned the 3-decker at 118 Kekechan Street, free and clear. She used to say that in this country, love is nice, but paper is what holds. She kept every document she owned in a blue Royal Dance cookie tin on the top shelf of her pantry, the round kind with the cardboard divider still in it. Deeds, insurance, the mortgage discharge from 1988. The tin was a joke in our family. It stopped being a joke later. After the fall, the injury was the first thing that happened to me, and the second thing that happened to me was my father's reaction to it. He did not come to Rhode Island Hospital for 6 days. When he came, he stood at the end of the bed with his hat in his hands, and the first full sentence he said to me was about his experience modification rate. That is an insurance number. It goes up when someone gets hurt on your job, and it stays up for 3 years, and it makes you more expensive than your competitors on every bid. Do you understand what this does to me? He said. I was on a morphine pump. I said I was sorry. That is the detail I want you to hold on to, because it explains the next 8 years. I apologized to him. From the bed. On day 6. The case did not go against my father, because the rack belonged to a scaffolding sub out of Taunton, and the tag records were their responsibility. It settled in November of 2018. After the attorney's fees and the medical liens, I netted $260,000. My mother started referring to it as the family's money, before the check even cleared. Not out of greed exactly. Out of a certainty that anything good that landed on me had landed in the wrong place and needed redistributing. Then February of 2019 came, and Botello Mechanical nearly went under. The mill job had a payment dispute. The general held $90,000 in retainage for 11 months. My father had payroll for 6 men and a fuel bill and 2 truck notes. He came to my apartment on Rodman Street, the accessible one I was renting for $950 a month, and he sat on my couch and he cried. That was the only time in my life I saw it. He asked me for $110,000. And I said yes in under a minute, because that is what you do when your father cries, and because some ugly hopeful part of me thought that this was the transaction that would finally make me a son. My grandmother heard about it the next day, and she made one phone call of her own. She took me to Nelson Furtado, an attorney on South Main Street who did closings and wills for half the Portuguese families in the city, and she sat in the chair beside me with her pocketbook on her knees. "Write it properly," she told him. "She is not giving, she is lending." So Nelson wrote it properly, and this is the part my father forgot, the way people forget a smoke detector on a ceiling. There was a promissory note for $110,000 at 5%, with payments starting after 18 months. There was a security agreement giving me a lien on the company's equipment, which meant the 2 service trucks, the compressor, the threading machine, and the excavator he bought in 2016. And there was a third document, and the third document is the one that ended everything. Because after my accident, my father's own credit and his safety record were wrecked, and the surety company would not write bonds for him alone anymore. No bond means no public work, no schools, no municipal buildings, no state jobs. In this business, That is not a limp. That is an amputation. So Ray Gaudet, his bonding agent out of Providence, put together a package where I signed as a personal indemnitor, and I pledged $80,000 of my settlement into a collateral account that the surety could reach. My clean credit and my money were the reason Botello Mechanical could bid a single public dollar after 2019. My father signed that paperwork at Nelson's conference table on the 11th of March 2019. And then we all went to lunch at a place on Bedford Street, and he told the waitress I was his right hand. Not one payment on that note was ever made. Not one. The first 18 months I did not ask, because he was rebuilding. In the 20th month I asked, gently, and he said things were tight. In the 26th month I asked again, and my mother called me that night, and said something I can still hear in her exact pitch. After everything that happened, you are going to nickel and dime your own father? And that is when the story flipped in their mouths. The loan became a gift. The gift became a payback. The payback became a debt I owed them. Tell me honestly, has your family ever taken money from you and then quietly changed the name of it? Because I have noticed that the people who do this always reach for the same word, and the word is always help. Meanwhile, my grandmother was dying, slowly, over 2 years, of congestive heart failure. And I want to be very clear about who did that work, because everyone at that Christmas table had an opinion about who loved her. I moved into the first floor of 118 Kequichan in the spring of 2021. I did her night checks. I weighed her every morning and logged it in a spiral notebook to catch the fluid. I learned to transfer a 90-pound woman from a bed to a commode, from a seated position, which is not something they teach you, and which cost me a torn rotator cuff that I still feel in cold weather. My mother came on Sundays for 2 hours. My sister came at Christmas and posted a photograph. Diolinda died on the 9th of February, 2023, at 4 a.m, holding my wrist because my hand was busy. Her will was dated 2021, and it was not complicated. Nelson had written it. The house went to me. Her savings, about $19,000, went to Kayla. My father contested nothing, because there was nothing to contest, and because Nelson had been careful enough to have a doctor's capacity letter attached. But the family arranged the facts into a shape they could live with. The story became that I had moved in on a sick old woman and talked her out of the family home. Probate closed in March of 2024. The deed came back in my name alone. And here is what I did with it. And I want you to hear how stupid loyalty can look from the outside. I let my parents keep living on the second floor, rent-free, exactly as they had for 11 years. I let my sister and Brett Mello have the third floor, rent-free, when their landlord in Somerset sold the building. I kept the first floor for myself, and then in the fall of 2024, I moved out of it, into a rented apartment on Rodman Street again, because my parents wanted the first floor for holidays and storage, and my mother said the stairs were nothing for young people. The front porch at 118 has 5 steps. There has never been a ramp. In June of 2022, I gave my mother $12,000 for a ramp and to widen the downstairs bathroom door to 36 inches. That money went to Kayla's wedding reception at White's of Westport. I found out at the wedding when my aunt complimented my parents on paying for the room. So for 4 years, every holiday, Brett carried me up those 5 steps like a piece of furniture, and everybody watched, and somebody always made the same joke about my weight. That is the thing nobody tells you about being carried. You are not being helped. You are being demonstrated. And then there was the video. In October of 2024, my physical therapist in Providence recorded 30 seconds of me in the parallel bars, in bilateral leg braces, taking 4 steps with her hand on my belt. I sent it to the family group chat because I was proud. 4 steps had taken me 19 months. Kayla screenshotted it, cropped out the bars and the braces and the therapist, and posted it to Facebook with the words, "A miracle in our family." 211 likes. My mother commented with 3 hearts. And from that week forward, in the private language of my family, I was a woman who could walk and chose not to. Every accommodation became a performance. Every bad day became a bid for attention. My handicapped placard became a scam they mentioned at parties. Thanksgiving of 2024 was the proof, if I had been willing to see it then. I had a pressure sore on my left hip that had been open since August, 4 centimeters across, packed and dressed twice a day by a visiting nurse. I told my mother in advance that I could not sit at a hard chair for 3 hours, and I asked her for one thing: a cushion on a padded seat, or a spot on the end where I could stay in my own chair. She told me the dining room only fits so many people, and that Kayla's in-laws were coming, and that I could sit in the kitchen if I wanted to be difficult. I sat in the dining room on oak for 2 hours and 40 minutes, and the wound opened wider, and I spent $700 out of pocket on a specialty mattress overlay in December. When I mentioned the cost, my father said that if I wanted to be treated like everybody else, I should stop billing the family for my choices. That is the sentence. That is the whole family in one sentence. My body was a choice I kept billing them for. The 4th of November, 2025, is the day I stopped hoping, and I can tell you the hour. It was a Tuesday, 4:30 in the afternoon, and my father called me for the first time in 5 months. He needed the paperwork for the bond package renewal, because Ray Gaudet needed updated financials from the indemnitor, which was me. He also mentioned, in the same breath, that Botello Mechanical was the apparent low bidder on the mechanical package for a middle school renovation, $940,000, the biggest number of his life, signing in early January. And I said carefully that I would send everything over and that I wanted to talk about the note. There was a pause on the line that lasted maybe 4 seconds, and in those 4 seconds, I heard the whole rest of my life. "There is no note," he said. "There is a daughter who got hurt on my job and cost me my rating and my name, and I carried her, and now she wants a receipt." I hung up, and I sat in my car, in the CVS parking lot, on Robeson Street for 40 minutes. I was not angry yet. Anger came later. What I felt first was a kind of quiet that I had been avoiding for 8 years. Then I drove to South Main Street without an appointment, and Nelson Furtado's secretary let me in because I had known her since I was 9. I sat across from a man who had watched my grandmother put her pocketbook on her knees in that same office, and I asked him one question: "What do I actually have?" He took 40 minutes and a legal pad, and he wrote it out in a column, and I want to read you the column the way he wrote it. "The house at 118 Kequichan Street, owned by me outright, with my parents and my sister living there as tenants at will, meaning 30 days notice and out. A promissory note in default since September of 2020, principal $110,000, with accrued interest bringing it to about $152,000. A perfected lien on every piece of equipment that company owns, filed in 2019 and continued in 2024, which Nelson had continued without ever telling me, because my grandmother had paid him a retainer to keep watching. And an indemnity agreement with the surety, revocable by me on written notice, along with $80,000 of my money in a pledged collateral account that had been sitting there for 6 years earning almost nothing. "If you revoke," Nelson said, "he cannot bond the school job, and the surety will look hard at the 2 open bonds he already has." I asked him to prepare everything, all of it, notices, demand letter, revocation, the works. He asked me when I wanted it sent, and I said I did not know yet, and that was the truth. I said prepare it and hold it, because a part of me was still waiting to be proven wrong about my own family. That was the 11th of November. The papers sat in Nelson's drafts folder for 43 days, finished, addressed, unsent. I want you to understand that I did not go to Christmas Eve with a plan. I went with a folder that existed and a hope that I would never open it. I went because my mother called me on the 20th and asked me to bring the rice pudding, and because I am 34 years old and I still wanted to be invited. Christmas Eve at 118 Coquachin Street starts at 6, and the food comes out at 7:30. Salt cod with potatoes and cabbage and eggs, kale soup, the fried dough my grandmother used to make, and my Aunt Zulmira now makes worse. There were 22 people. My parents, Kayla and Brett and their daughter Aubrey, who is 5, Aunt Zulmira, who is 78, cousins, 2 neighbors, and Helio Ponte, 70 years old, my godfather, my father's foreman, for 26 years, who was on the 4th floor of that mill building, on the 16th of May, 2017. Brett carried me up the 5 steps at 6:15. Somebody made the joke. I laughed at it, because that is a survival skill. My chair was brought up separately, and I transferred into it in the front hall, while 11 people watched and pretended not to. Dinner was fine for an hour. That is the part that still confuses me. It was fine. Then my father stood up with a beer and made his announcement, and the room went warm and loud, the way rooms do. When a man is about to say something he has rehearsed in the truck. He talked about the school job. $940,000. Signing in January, and then he said that Botello Mechanical was going to be Botello & Son as of the new year, and he put his hand on the back of Brett's neck. Brett had been in the trade for 2 years and 8 months. Brett could not read an isometric drawing. The room clapped. My mother's eyes were wet. Aubrey banged her spoon, and I sat there with a plate of salt cod in front of me, in a chair I paid for, on a floor I owned, in a house he lived in for free, and something in my chest simply went quiet and level. I waited until the clapping stopped, and I said it evenly, without a single sharp edge in it. Congratulations. That is a good year to start paying back the note. I have replayed the next 90 seconds more times than I can count. My father put the beer down on the table hard enough that the bottle rocked. There is no note, he said. There is money this family gave you out of an accident, and you have been sitting on it, and sitting on us, ever since. My mother came in over the top of him, and hers was worse because hers was calm. You know what this is really about, she said to the table. Not to me. This is what happens when a person decides being sick is a career. Kayla laughed first. She had her phone out already, and she turned it toward my aunt, and it was the cropped video, the 4 steps, the miracle in our family. She walks at therapy, Kayla said. She walks fine, she just does not walk here. And then my father pointed his fork at my chair and slowed his hand down so everyone could follow it. Stop faking for attention, he said. You have been sitting in that thing for 8 years, and every person at this table knows you can walk when it suits you. I said quietly that I would like to go home, and my mother stood up, and she walked behind me, and she took the push handles of a chair that costs $4,200 and is fitted to my spine. She rolled me backward, out from the table, into the hallway, and left the chair by the coat rack, and came back and sat down. Crawl if you have to, she said. That is what she said, in front of 22 people, in a room where I had eaten my grandmother's food for 34 years. And then the laughing. Elio did not laugh. Aubrey did not laugh, because she was 5, and she was watching her grandmother's face, and not understanding it. I was sitting on a hard oak dining chair, with no armrests and no cushion, which for someone with my injury is not embarrassment, it is a wound, in 4 hours. My feet were flat on a floor that belonged to me. I did not shout. I have never once been able to shout in that house. I reached into my bag, under the edge of the tablecloth, and I found Nelson Furtado's name in my phone, and I pressed it. He picked up on the second ring, at his sister's house in Swansea, with a room full of noise behind him. And I said 11 words. "Nelson, it is Marisa. Send everything, tonight, all of it." He said okay. He did not ask a single question. He said okay, and he hung up, and I put my phone face down beside my plate. My mother asked me who I was calling, and I told her the truth. I said I was calling my lawyer, and the table laughed again, because it was Christmas Eve, and because a woman in a dining chair with dead legs is not a threat to anybody. The first call landed at 8:41. It was not my father's phone, it was Brett's, and he did not answer it, because he did not recognize the number, and he was carving. The second call, 4 minutes later, was my father's, and the screen said Providence, and he answered it the way men answer work calls at parties, half turned, one finger in his other ear. "Ray," he said. "Merry Christmas! What are you doing calling on the 20?" And then he stopped talking. I watched him. I want to be honest about that. I watched him the whole time, and I did not look away once. He listened for about 10 seconds. His jaw went first, then the color under his eyes, then his shoulders. Ray Gaudet had gotten an email with a subject line that made him leave his own family's table, and the email was a written revocation of indemnity from the sole indemnitor on the account, effective immediately, along with a demand for release of $80,000 in pledged collateral. 10 seconds is enough time for a man in that business to understand that the school job is gone, that the bond will not be issued, and that the 2 open bonds he already has are now sitting on nothing. My father lowered the phone from his ear without ending the call. "What did you do?" he said. The room had gone quiet, in that way rooms do, when the temperature changes, and nobody can say why. I told him. I told him in short pieces, one at a time, and I made him wait between them, because I had waited 8 years. I said the note was in default since September of 2020, and the balance with interest was about $152,000. I said there was a lien on both trucks, the compressor, the threading machine, and the excavator, filed in 2019, continued in 2024. I said the indemnity that let him bid public work had been mine, and the $80,000 behind it had been mine, and as of 9 minutes ago, neither one was his anymore. And then I said the last one. I said the house he was standing in belonged to me, that he and my mother were tenants at will, and that a 30-day notice to quit had already been sent to this address. My mother made a sound I had never heard from her. Kayla said that was not possible, that the house was the family's, that Grandma would never. And Elio Ponte, 70 years old, sitting near the window with his hands on his knees, said the first thing anybody had said in his own voice all night. "The tin," he said. "The old woman kept the papers in the tin. You all knew." Brett stood up, not to defend anybody. Brett stood up because he was 2 weeks from signing partnership papers into a company with no bonding capacity, Lion equipment, and a $152,000 judgment walking toward it. He looked at my father, and he said, "Is any of this true?" And my father did not answer him. That was the moment the family that had laughed 12 minutes earlier stopped being one thing and became 4 or 5 separate people with separate problems. My mother came around the table toward me, fast, and her face had rearranged itself entirely. She said my name the way she used to say it when I was small and sick with a fever. "Marisa, Marisa, filha, you are upset. You misunderstood your father." And my father put the phone on the table, and he walked across the dining room, and in front of his brother and his sister-in-law, and his aunt and 2 neighbors, and his own granddaughter, Carlos Botello, went down onto his knees on the carpet. He was 66 years old. His knees are bad. It took him a second to get down, and he made a noise doing it. Do not do this, he said. Do not leave, Marisa. Please. We can fix it in the morning. 8 years. 8 years of asking for a ramp. 8 years of being carried up 5 steps like a bag of fittings. 8 years of no payment, no apology, no acknowledgement. And the word please arrived in 9 minutes, because a bonding agent in Providence made a phone call. That is the part I want anybody listening to understand, because it is the whole lesson of my life. It was never that he could not respect me. It was that he had never before been in a position where he had to. I did not yell at him. I want that on the record too, because I know what people expect from a story like this. I looked at the man on the floor, and I asked him for one thing, and I asked for it in a normal voice. Bring me my chair. And nobody moved. That is the detail that finished it for me, forever. Not the pointing, not the laughing, not even the crawling line. It was that when I asked for my own chair, in a house I owned, with my father on his knees in front of me, 22 adults sat still. My mother said, Marisa, do not be like this. My sister looked at her phone, and then my mother tried the last thing she had, which was a trade, and she said it fast and low like a woman closing a door on a fire. She said that if I called the lawyer back tonight, right now, before anything went further, they would put my name on the company, a real percentage, and she would tell everyone on Facebook exactly what my grandmother's will said. She was offering me, at 8:55 on Christmas Eve, in exchange for their bonding capacity, the 2 things I had asked for in plain words since 2019. Ownership of what I had paid for, and the truth said out loud. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I still do. Both of those things had been available to her for 6 years, and they had cost nothing, and she had chosen not to give them. They only became available when they became currency. I told her no. I did not say it cruelly. I said no the way you decline a second helping. And my father, still down on that carpet, said the sentence that I think will follow me into the ground. He said, "You are punishing me for one bad night." And I looked at the hallway, and at the coat rack, and at the dent my chair had left in the rug when it was rolled out of the room. And I said, "You have had 3,000 of them. This is just the one with witnesses." And then a 5-year-old put down her cup, climbed off her chair, went into the hallway, and tried to push a $4,000 rehab chair with locked wheels across a rug, and could not, and started to cry, because she could not. Elio got up. He released the brakes, and he brought Aubrey and the chair back into the room together, and he set it beside me, and put his hand flat on my shoulder. He is the man who was on the 4th floor in 2017. He is the man who told the investigators that the tag had been pulled, and nobody logged it. Papers all in order, he said quietly, in Portuguese, half to me and half to my father. Your mother did that. I transferred myself into my chair in front of all of them. It takes me about 11 seconds, and it is not graceful, and I did not care. My father was still on the carpet, saying that we were family, that this was Christmas, that we could talk Monday. I told him Monday was fine. I told him to bring Nelson's number and a checkbook. Then I put the container of rice pudding back in my bag, because I had made it and I was not leaving it there. Brett carried me down the 5 steps for the last time in my life, and he did not make the joke. At the bottom, on the sidewalk, in the cold, he said, I did not know about any of it. And I believed him, and I told him that not knowing had never once helped me. I drove home on Route 79 with the heat on. I did not cry in the car either. I cried at 11:15 that night, in my own kitchen, and it lasted about 4 minutes, and it was not about my parents. It was about my grandmother, and a blue cookie tin, and a woman born in 1931 who could barely write English and understood exactly what her family was going to try to do to me. Here is what happened after, and none of it was a miracle. It was just arithmetic finally being allowed to happen. The 26th of December, Ray Gaudet confirmed in writing that no new bonds would be issued to Botello Mechanical. The 6th of January, the middle school mechanical package went to the second bidder, Sousa Brothers, at a number $11,000 higher. The 9th of January, Brett told my sister he was not signing anything, and he took a job as a service tech for an outfit in Seekonk for $29 an hour. My father sold the excavator on the 17th of January, and one of the 2 trucks in February, and through Nelson he paid me $61,000 and signed a payment plan for the rest at $900 a month. He has made every single payment on time. 8 years of nothing, and now he has never once been late. I think about that a lot. My parents left 118 Quaquachin Street on the 31st of January and took a 2-bedroom on Bedford Street for $1,400 a month. My mother did not speak to me for 4 months, and then she began calling my Aunt Zulmira to relay messages, which is how women in my family have conducted wars for 100 years. Kayla sent me a long message in March about how I had destroyed the family over money. She has never once mentioned the hallway. The company still exists. It is smaller, it is private work only, and it is 4 men instead of 9. Elio retired in April and calls me every second Sunday. I moved into the first floor in March, after the ramp went in. It cost $9,400 and took a contractor 11 days, and I paid for it out of the $80,000 that came back to me from the collateral account. 6 steps of gentle slope, pressure-treated, with a landing. The bathroom door is 36 inches now, and there is a roll-in shower where the tub was. The second floor is rented to a young couple from Cape Verde who pay on the first. The third floor is rented to a nurse, and I do not carry a single dollar of debt on a house my grandmother paid off in 1988. I want to end with the part that took me the longest to learn, because it is not the part people expect. The lesson is not that I won. I did not win anything. You do not win your childhood back with a promissory note. The lesson is that my family was never confused about my condition. They did not misunderstand the word incomplete. They understood it perfectly. Calling me a faker was not ignorance. It was a tool, and the tool had a job, and the job was to make my needs cost them nothing. People will tell you that family is family, and that blood forgives. What nobody tells you is that some families only respect a boundary that has consequences attached to it. For 8 years I asked with my voice, and my voice was free, so it was worth nothing to them. The night I asked with something that had a cost, they heard me in 10 seconds. So if you are the useful one, the strong one, the one who signed, the one who lent, the one who moved in and did the night checks while everybody else posted photographs, hear this from a woman in a chair, on Quaquachin Street. Write it down. Get it on paper. Not because you are planning revenge, but because someday you may need permission to stop, and paper is the only permission that does not require their agreement. And love the ones who kneel to pick up your chair before they are made to. My grandmother was right about this country and about her own son. Love is nice. Paper is what holds.